Investigative journalists Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp are back in the news with another amazing piece of UAP UFO footage, this time from November 2020, supposedly taken by a Department of Defense asset, which could mean drone, plane, or satellite, somewhere near the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. The footage itself is compelling in that it shows a disc-shaped object maneuvering through the clouds, which then makes an abrupt directional change, all without any sort of thermal signature, suggesting its propulsion system is unlike anything we've ever seen before. We'll dive into the footage on today's episode of The Weekly Strange. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Weekly Strange. I'm your host, Jon F. Merz, author, actor, adventurer. On today's episode, we're looking at some new groundbreaking UAP footage that famed investigative journalists Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp just released last week. And here's the thing. Whether you love them or hate them, these guys are doing some pretty compelling work. Let's just be completely upfront and honest about that. Because of their commitment to putting out quality investigative work as opposed to more sensationalistic videos, they've earned the trust of an awful lot of people who otherwise probably wouldn't come forward. And I think that's something we should all be grateful for. These guys have put out a lot of really compelling evidence for the existence of UAPs or UFOs or whatever you want to call them, with a tremendous amount of this evidence coming from folks who are either active in the armed forces and intelligence community or retired or work as private contractors. They've gotten their hands on some evidence and made sure that we, the public, have the opportunity to watch it and decide for ourselves what it might be. So with that said, let's take a look at the first video. All right, now, I'll be honest, when I watched this, I couldn't even see anything at all. It wasn't until later videos when I was able to make out the disc itself. So what I'm going to do here on this video is try to zoom in and enhance the original video so that you can see it that way. And I'm going to try to put a little red arrow around where you should be looking, okay? Let's watch. It's still not great, obviously, but at least you can see it to a better extent than in the original video. And now we'll go through the enhancements that were made on this video so that you can see things a lot more clearly. Bear in mind that they also used artificial intelligence to enhance the imagery, and that's the footage that has a bluish tint to it. And I'm glad they did on one hand because it makes it easier to see and examine. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so now that we've had a chance to look at these videos, I'm certainly intrigued. I mean, the footage certainly speaks for itself. The disc is clear, although Jeremy notes that it could also be a sphere, but we can't tell because whatever asset this is that captured the footage, it's obviously looking down on the target. But as quickly as Corbell says that, he goes on to say that he knows that they captured this from multiple sources, and the government itself officially called it a disk and not a sphere. So his confidence is high that it is an actual disk. The thing that's annoying about the original footage in this case is that it looks almost like there's light near the top of the screen, almost as if someone was screen recording it, and the screen they were recording off of had a hot spot of light on it. That's one of the things that makes it difficult to spot the UAP in the original video. But regardless, the follow-on videos make it abundantly clear what we're looking at here. As you can imagine, this footage is making the rounds in the UAP community, and I wanted to be sure to weigh in on it as well, simply because it falls within the purview of this show to cover any and all strange types of news and events. Now, this is thermal imagery. I think it's FLIR, forward-looking infrared, so it's inherently black and white, and the video shows absolutely no other sources of heat, nothing in terms of, say, heat plumes or heated propulsion. However this object was able to move, it apparently did so without the use of combustion. And it's also important to note that the term UAP was not used by either Corbell or Knapp, but by the DoD report on this footage itself. They said it's a UAP, not the reporters. Now, this footage comes from November 23rd, 2020, and the coordinates where it was shot point to the area in the Hindu Kush region near the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. The titling on this video from the DoD says, UAP using clouds for concealment, which is pretty interesting. Now, according to some of the folks in the comments section on YouTube, the platform that accidentally captured this footage was likely from an MQ-9 Reaper drone platform produced by General Atomics. It's the evolutionary leap forward, so to speak, from the MQ-1 Predator. And the Reaper performs multiple roles on the battlefield. These include, but aren't limited to, the following: ISR, which stands for Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance; strike operations, close air support, combat search and rescue, target development, and much more. So with that said, what was this Reaper doing in the vicinity of the Amsar region of Afghanistan in November 2020? At that point, the U.S. was in the midst of a drawdown of troops from Afghanistan. But even so, there were still many missions being carried out by both U.S. and coalition special operations forces, along with their Afghani counterparts. Was the Reaper performing ISR and ready close air support during a boots-on-the-ground combat operation against a high-value target? Or was it conducting surveillance for an eventual strike? Now, due to the fact that the timestamp on the footage reads as 11:13 UTC, that would correspond with it being almost 4 o'clock in the early evening, late afternoon in Afghanistan. That tends to rule out, not entirely, but probably, any sort of boots-on-the-ground snatch and grab operation, since those are mostly conducted at night. However, that Reaper may have been in position early for the purposes of either acquiring intelligence on an eventual target or else tracking another target with the idea of eventually striking it. And we may never know exactly if there was an operation ongoing at the point this video was captured, but we should be pretty grateful that this platform was in the vicinity in the first place. Now, I should note, I have not verified that this did indeed come from a Reaper, but given the heads-up display, it seems likely that it did. But then again, it's the comment section on a YouTube page, so it's kind of the Wild West out there, folks. Now, apparently Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp waited a number of years before they decided to release this footage. According to them, they did so because they, obviously, wanted to be sure that this was coming from a legitimate source that could be both verified and trusted. But they also allude to the idea that they were hoping to be called to testify before Congress, where they would have released the video then. But that call apparently never came. And so after authenticating the footage as much as they could and applying their usual stringent conditions for release, they decided to put it out themselves. No doubt frustrated by the apparent lack of interest expressed by Congress. What else is new? Now, Corbell also explains that this is not the actual raw footage that came from this platform, whether it's a Reaper or satellite or what have you. And that sort of explains the bothersome light heat spot at the top of the screen I mentioned earlier. Yeah, it's 4K, but it's a 4K recording of a screen. So the quality is going to be pretty craptacular regardless. And many people have noticed that fact, saying how pixelated the video is and how the U.S. Air Force should have better cameras on their platforms, given how incredibly expensive everything is. And those comments, they're absolutely correct. They should have better cameras, and they very likely do. But given this looks like someone took out their phone and recorded the screen that was showing the raw footage, and perhaps not even the raw footage, but a copy of it, the pixelation and poor quality make a bit more sense. I mean, video quality goes downhill pretty fast, especially when you start making copies of it. The degradation ends up looking like, well, exactly like what we have here. Which doesn't mean this isn't incredible footage. I happen to think it is, especially when you see what the camera saw. I mean, yeah, the first time I watched the first video, I couldn't see a damn thing. And I kept replaying it over and over, looking at every section of the screen, trying to see it. It's only after I zoomed in on it the way I did here for you guys that I could even see anything at all. And fortunately, Corbell and Knapp released the other videos as well, and it's a lot easier to see it in those. As for the video that has the artificial intelligence job done on it, I'm not really keen on it, simply because it introduces too many artifacts and effects that distract and distort from the original video. I mean, it's a shame that Corbell and Knapp couldn't get their hands on the actual raw footage, but who knows? Now that this is out, maybe the government will release the raw footage and we'll see even more detail than what we can see here. But I kind of doubt that will happen. And so we're left with this. Depending on whether you buy into the belief or not, you'll likely see one of two things. Either it's compelling footage of a UAP, or it's something more easily explained. And I'm certainly not making any pronouncements on its nature or its origin, except to say this: it's definitely strange. Okay, that's going to do it for this episode of The Weekly Strange. If you enjoyed the show, I would sincerely appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any new uploads, and be sure to drop me a comment below the video. Keep it classy, please. And feel free to reach out via email at theweeklystrange@gmail.com. I will be back in a few days with a brand new episode of The Weekly Strange. For now, thank you very much for watching and listening. Have a wonderful night. I will see you again soon.